Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Spring Hills Podcast. My name is Garrett. I'm the worship pastor here at Spring Hills, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I've got Pastor Bret and Pastor Jon Knapp here in the green room with me, and we are going to recap our most recent sermon series, I Need a Miracle. Now, if you missed out on any of these sermons, you can check them out on our YouTube channel. And also, don't forget, on the weekends, you can join us for church online or church on the lawn. Go to springhills.org or download the free Spring Hills app to find more information on when those services are and how you can join us online. I hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get to it. This is our series recap of I Need a Miracle. Well, welcome to Bret and Jon for coming in today. We're going to do a series recap for you on the series I Need a Miracle. So we were able to do all of these outside, which is great. But Bret, you had taught also midweek, so you can for the online, church on the lawn. So either one you were at, you can find these messages online to listen to on our YouTube channel, and you can also find them on the Spring Hills podcast. So we started off week one. You had talked about, just at the start, 35 miracles recorded in the New Testament. They identified Jesus as the true Son of God. If you don't believe me, believe the works that I do. The miracles were signs. I wanted to ask you, this is maybe an unanswerable question because I have no idea. Would there have been more miracles that just weren't recorded?
Oh, yeah, there's tons. If you look at the Gospel of John in chapter 20, John ends his gospel by saying that if all the miracles that Jesus performed had been written down, all the libraries in the world couldn't have contained them. So, but John says the ones that he chose and recorded in his gospel were so that you'd believe Jesus was the Christ, the Son of God, and that you'd have life in his name. So Jesus did many, many, many miracles that were not recorded.
Cool. So yeah, Bret, give us a little bit of an idea of why you went with this series. Why 4 weeks? Why these passages?
Well, it's a great question. I think in the midst of COVID-19, when the programming staff got together and we tried to decide what to do, that idea, I need a miracle right now, just resonated with everybody. And it was like, we need something encouraging here. We need to see God work in the midst of this pandemic and the discouragement of it. So it was really, miracles are encouraging. I mean, and God works through different situations by providence. And so really the impetus was, let's encourage some people.
Right.
Yeah.
So what, Jon, want to give your general thoughts on this series?
I loved it. It was great.
Did you want to teach in this series and you just didn't get to?
No, it was, I always enjoy a good message when I get to listen, and learn. But the idea of I Need a Miracle, I agree with the programming staff and with Bret, the vision. When I heard about this series, my mind just thought like how moms and dads and single people and just like anybody can identify with this need of just, I need something miraculous to happen. Like we couldn't have scripted this pandemic to go this way, but we probably can say that people are at a place where they need something miraculous to happen. Right. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed learning the practical side of, what do these miracles mean for us today?
Right. That
God is still in the business of working miracles in our lives. It may look very different than the miracles that we're reading and we're learning from up front on Sunday or Saturday night. But at the core of who they are, the miracle is the work of Christ in your life and the salvation that we've received and the miracle of new life in him. And I think that, the whole 4 weeks is just a great reminder, a great mirror to kind of reflect back to who Jesus is, what he's done for us, and the miracle that he worked in these lives is very possible for a miracle to be worked in our lives. But again, it might not be that our vision is going to be, restored physically, but there can be a different, maybe a spiritual vision that can be restored.
That's good. Yeah. That's good, Jon. I think people need to have always a big picture of who God is. I mean, the key to anything in life is seeing God for who he really is, his power, his love, his grace, his mercy. And certainly when you look at the miracles of Jesus, you're reminded that the Son of God who's in you can do the impossible, can do anything. When we look to ourselves and our own abilities, our own wit and knowledge and skill to get ourselves out of situations, boy, you can become discouraged really fast. But if you are reminded by seeing in Scripture who Jesus is and you look to him, now all of a sudden, there's more peace in your life. You're expectant. You're even excited about what God can do in impossible situations.
Right. I don't want to jump ahead, but you just, with week 3, you had this spot in week 3. I think you ended with it where you did this. Who is this? Who is Jesus, the Son of God? And you went over this over and over. And I thought it was so powerful the way that you went through that, just to explain that these miracles are explaining who he is. And sometimes we forget who God is, and the miracles show us exactly who he was. John 5, this is where you started off the series at, John 5, 1 through 3. I did have a question, though. I noticed that the ESV doesn't have verse 4.
Yeah, very good question. And yeah, when you read the ESV, it just skips it. It goes.
Is there? What's the reasoning
well,
for
because
that?
that verse does not appear in the oldest Greek manuscript copies that we have.
Okay.
So the ESV translators chose to leave it out. It's a verse that says that people believe that when the waters were stirred, that an angel would come down and the first one in would be healed. So, when New Testament translators are putting together the New Testament from manuscripts, the oldest ones are usually regarded as the most reliable. So,
okay.
That's why it's not there. But it is interesting, and all of a sudden you go, "Where's verse 4?"
I was looking through it, and I'm like, "Oh, I wonder if there's an error," because I'm online, right? I'm on Bible Gateway, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, "Ooh, Bible Gateway errors, man! Look at that." Does it happen in other spots in the Bible with ESV? Okay, it's not.
And usually the translators will make a note, like at the end of Mark 16.
You'll see down at the bottom.
You'll see at the bottom that the oldest manuscripts don't include verses 10 through whatever. And John 8, it's the same way.
Okay.
So when there's two philosophies about the Greek manuscript. One philosophy is that the oldest is best. So find the oldest copy and go with it. The other philosophy is that the preponderance is best. So if you have more copies of a passage, more copies, it's called the majority idea.
Mm-hmm.
You have more copies, then that those translators go with the majority because they believe that the most copies would have been made of the original. So without getting into the weeds here.
Right. Well, verses 1 through 3 say, after this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate of Pool in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has 5 roofed, how do you say that word? Colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. Now, you mentioned you've seen this pool.
Yes.
John, have you also?
I've seen the pool as well.
Okay, so since you both had this opportunity, and you've seen some other pretty amazing places since you were able to go. Now, you've been a couple times, right, Brett, over to Israel? Okay.
Yes.
So what's the feeling like walking the roads where Jesus has walked, seeing places like this? What do you, because this is such a terrible comparison, but I've been to like movie sets, like the mall in Back to the Future, where I'm like, Back to the Future is my favorite movie. I see it, I'm like, ooh, this is cool.
Yeah, same idea. I mean, really.
Oh, but also we're talking
it's
about
real.
It's real, and it's something that. So, what's the feeling like when you walk those roads?
Well, a lot of people didn't believe that the Pool of Bethesda existed until it was discovered in 1888. Many, and that's what you see with biblical archaeology. These places are excavated. Usually they're building a building of some sort, and they find an excavation site and they unearth these things. So, but the Pool of Bethesda is huge. I mean, when it says there's 5 colonnades and there were many people laying around. I mean, it's a huge.
What's a colonnade?
Area. Just the covering.
Okay.
Covering 5 coverings. And they actually, when you look at the Pool of Bethesda today, you see the shape of it, which would have lent itself to these 5 colonnades. I mean, it's amazing. It's a surreal experience. Wouldn't you say, John?
It's one of those where you're looking down from where you see it. You look down to the Pool of Bethesda.
I need to look up a picture of this while you guys are talking about it.
And in America, you think of the word pool, and it's not a square with just an open spot where people like bathe, or not bathe, but like swim and play, right?
Okay.
From how I viewed it, there were spots where people could sit and be around it, and it's more of a place where people would go and socially right, Brett? I mean, you would think that.
Yeah, well, it was a
Found-
lot of invalids and a lot of people that were looking for healing because of the belief that when the water
The
stirred,
stirred up, yeah.
it was fed with a spring. So, like if the water moved, whoever gets in it next, yeah, there he is.
Yeah. So you're
Garett's got a
standing.
picture of it here.
Yeah, you're standing up and you're looking down at it. Yeah. So
Yeah, and it had the whole city of Jerusalem after all these years is much higher than the original city. So to get to the original city, you've got to dig down, 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 because it just gets covered over year after year, built on top of itself.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing, all the sites in Jerusalem and Israel. I mean, you just go, oh my goodness. Everybody has to go to Israel that is a believer.
Yeah.
I think.
And
Yeah.
you mentioned
Soon
that
as
you
we
went.
can.
I forget which week you mentioned this, but you mentioned that maybe it was this week where you mentioned you went on this trip and you had non-believers in your group, and you would teach and you would
Yes.
say, "Who is Jesus?" And
oh yeah,
by
I was
the end
on
of
that
it,
trip, and he ended every single Bible
Who
study
is
with
Jesus?
Who is this?
Who is
man?
this Jesus? I think that was the
yeah.
week 3 when you did end with "Who is Jesus?" But I was just thinking, how could you go on this tour or whatever you want to call it, and not believe and like see that this was real and not have your heart just like, I mean, I don't know, just so impactful. Like,
Yeah,
just to see
the people believe it as an archaeological site, as a historical site. They don't accept
They don't believe in
Jesus is
miracles
the Son
and-
of God.
yeah.
That
Miraculous
they don't
side.
believe in a miracle. It's to them it would be even our tour guide was not a believer. So tradition or passed down, and we I was joking about with John here. I mean, every time I've gone, we've had the same tour guide, and we always try to convert him to Christ.
Yep.
Oh,
And-
you know that you kind of know this guy now.
Yeah, we've had him twice.
Does he
and,
remember you?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, his name is Mickey. He's a great guy and brilliant, but not a believer in the miracles or the resurrection or anything.
Brilliant historian. But
Yeah,
just
right.
doesn't have the relationship and
No.
the faith.
No.
Interesting.
When I talked to him, there was always natural causes that could explain the
Right.
miraculous.
Oh, wow.
So like when Jesus tells the fishermen to throw the net over that side of the boat or in that area, he would respond with, "Well, it was well known that was a hot spot for fish."
All right.
Or
What
something
about
along
walking on the water?
Yeah, yeah.
What's
You
his-
get to that though, and you're like, he can't
I asked
really.
him that, and he
Yeah.
just kind of looked at me. He had no response for that.
Yeah.
Well, what about this right here? This guy getting
Yeah.
up and walking after he's
Yeah.
been. Does it say how long he'd been there?
He'd been there for 38 years.
38 years.
That's a long time.
It is. We're not even 38
And
years
then
old yet.
Jesus asked him, "Do you want to get well?" It's like, are you kidding me?
in less than 38 seconds.
I love the questions that Jesus asks, things like that. Do you want to get well? Some even think that maybe the guy kind of enjoyed just pawning money or getting money, begging, and he didn't really want to change his life.
Interesting.
He just, it's a fascinating question. Do you want to get well?
Yeah, some of the questions every now and then when we read it, Caitlin and I will talk about how we think Jesus has this sense of humor of asking these questions to kind of making jokes. I can't think of the exact one we were talking about the other day, but she'll talk about these every now and then. She's like, "Is this because this seems funny, right?
Is he
This
serious?
is funny because why is he asking that question?" That's
Yeah.
interesting to think about. So there's this guy. He's by the pool of Bethesda, 38 years. Verse 5, one man was there who'd been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time, he says, "Do you want to be healed?" So Jesus identifies him, tells him that this is the result of what sin does. So let's talk about that for a minute, because you went into that a little bit about how this is the result of what sin does, and it stuck out to me how I forget which verse it is, but he says, "Sin no more, so these bad things don't happen again." Is that?
Yeah, sin no more. Where is that? Do you have that open, John? It's
Trying to read through.
Was it 14 or somewhere in there?
Afterwards, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "See, you are well, sin no more, that nothing worse may happen to you."
Yeah. So I'm wondering if people might look at that and be like, "Oh, so is this something that if I'm sinning, am I getting an immediate punishment for this?" And then you went into, no, this is the result of the sin of man, the fall.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, so Jesus is connecting what's happened to this man in the sickness of all the people around the pool to sin, and then sin no more that nothing worse could happen to you. It's like the guy gets healed, but he's not a believer as far as we know in Jesus. I mean, he doesn't even know who Jesus is.
Yeah.
So the thing that could happen worse to him wouldn't be more paralysis or something like
Right.
that. It'd be to be eternally lost.
Mhm.
That's the worst thing that can happen to somebody, is that you get some healing in this life, but you die and you don't have eternal life
Right.
because you failed to come to Jesus as your Savior.
Yeah, and there's no once that's happened, there is no healing from that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the horrible side of it all. And I really appreciated this part of it too, of understanding that, this sickness, and not just the blindness from this one man, but all the others who were there. It's easy for a person to look at their own situation, their circumstances, or quote unquote the cards that they've been dealt in life, and then turn and blame their situation on God. I have a daughter who's 8 years old, and she has a peanut allergy. And often she'll ask me, did God give me the peanut allergy? And, that is a huge question.
That's a hard question to
That's a
answer.
huge question. And I've began to really talk with her that, God created you perfect, absolutely perfect. We live in a fallen, and we live in a sinful world. And sin is a result, or your peanut allergy is a result of sin, honey, not God. God didn't give you this peanut allergy, because how horrible for her to have that beginning of understanding, gosh, God gave this to me, this negative thing, made me different than somebody else. And, maybe you're listening to this and there's something physically about your body or something physically about your family. And, you've been tempted to accuse God or say that it's something he's done to you. But we have to remember, sin is the enemy of why we have.
And the
these
good
things.
news is that God works all things together for good to those who love him and are called according to his purpose. I was at a Wednesday night, I think it was at our first Wednesday, I was just grappling with some of my own weaknesses. And
You have weaknesses?
Brett, please tell us more about these witnesses.
That's what people really want to
Spoiler
hear, don't
alert.
they? Yeah. Let's have a podcast on staff weaknesses. I got plenty of them, and I was thinking, sometimes I get really frustrated with some of the weaknesses I have, but I realize that the weaknesses I have keep me dependent and before God, and keep me seeking God, and keep me humble before God, keep me relishing in the mercy and grace and love of God. And so, I mean, you could become a Christian, God could take all your weaknesses away, but he chooses, like he did with the Apostle Paul, to keep the thorn in the flesh so that power would come out of that.
Right.
So even in peanut allergies or physical stuff, and hey, we all got stuff. Everybody's got stuff.
Everybody's got it.
But with that, there is the grace of God and the power of God that might not be experienced, in any other way, but through our weakness.
Yeah. One of the things that I loved in week 1 of I Need a Miracle is pointing out that Jesus didn't try to just get him into the pool. He just healed him. Just says, get up and walk. He didn't, pick him up and carry him into the pool. And it made me think of that in my own life, of just like, what are some of the things that I'm looking for God to do? And I'm like, I need God to give us, Caitlin and I were talking about this, financial things where it's like, we need God to just give us a big check and take care of this. And Caitlin and I were saying today, it's like, no, what we've learned over the last couple of years is what God's giving us is wisdom on how to prepare for these things. And it's not just the immediate quick fix of let me carry you into the pool and give you what you think you need. Because what you really need is wisdom, so you're going to be able to do this for the rest of your life and be prepared for the things that you need financially. And that's kind of a loose analogy or comparison.
Yeah,
with
I think
this.
that's
what's in your pool.
That's a really good. I think that's a key detail in this narrative that you could miss. That they're all trying to get in the pool, and people. Some people have an advantage because they're helped to get in by family, friends, whatever. Other people have a disadvantage, but they're all trying to do it. And Jesus comes and, with no regard to the pool at all, just says, rise, take up your bed and walk. He doesn't need this. He comes directly to us. And that's a picture of salvation too, where he saves us by his direct work in our life. He didn't come to help us save ourselves. He didn't come to help us, pull up our bootstraps. He didn't come to help us get in the pool. I mean, he does it. It's the miracle of grace. But we all have our pool. We're trying to get in to solve our problems. And, we're all the worse for it. We need to turn to Jesus, let him do a miraculous direct work.
Yeah. Yeah. Miracles are recorded to show us that Jesus is the Son of God. Anything else on week 1 before we jump to week 2?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Great. All right. So week 2, Exodus 14. I will say, I'll admit that this was my favorite one of the 4. Nothing against Carl this weekend, but the reason that this is my favorite is just because I felt like I could relate to it. The grumbling, especially the grumbling that we see later on in this passage. But Exodus 14 verses 1 and 2. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Tell the people of Israel to turn back and encamp in front of," and I'm not going to attempt to pronounce this. You did such a good job. Piharuth. Okay. Between Migdal and in front of Baal Zephon. I don't know how close I am on that.
Good.
That's good.
You shall encamp facing it by the sea. So God takes them a different route. He does this to demonstrate. So he's going to demonstrate his power. I thought this was so interesting because I've heard this story so many times. We've seen it in, Sunday school videos that the Jews, the Israelites are coming up to the Red Sea and they're waiting. And you see it in Prince of Egypt, that movie, and just things like that. And I've never really looked at that God took them a different route. He didn't take them directly to the promised land because he was going to demonstrate his power and he needed to prepare them.
Yeah, they weren't ready. It says, and I can't remember the exact passage now, but it's in this context. It says that he didn't take them by way of the Philistines, which would have been a direct route from Egypt to the promised land. He didn't take them because they weren't ready for battle. They weren't ready to face the Philistines in battle. So he takes them down by way of the Red Sea, and he's going to do these miracles to prepare them for what he wants to give them. And so trials, one of my points was during this message was not to resent the trial. Don't resent it. It's easy for us, I don't like what's going on. I hate this. And we can get into this negative, like the Israelites, you brought us out here. Were there no graves in Egypt that you brought us here to kill us? And we resent.
I feel like this right now with COVID right now. I'm like, well, were there no graves in Egypt?
Yeah,
Jeez.
I know. Are there no graves in L.A. that you brought me to Sonoma County? I mean, that's how it feels. But he's preparing them. He's going to show them his person, his power. And he has the whole promised land ahead of them. But we're not ready to enjoy all that God has given us without going through some trials where we see who he is. That's the point.
Yeah. Exodus 14:5. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, the mind of Pharaoh and his servants was changed toward the people, and they said, "What is this we have done that we have let Israel go from serving us?" And then you jump to verse 10. When Pharaoh drew near, the people of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them, and they feared greatly. And the people of Israel cried out to the Lord. And this is where you said they just kind of freaked out a little bit. And Moses, what'd you do? Bring us here to die? What are you doing, Moses? We should just go back to Egypt. I can't imagine the frustration that Moses would have had.
Oh, my goodness.
When somebody goes, let's just go back to Egypt, man. Like, no, Moses, I'm not being a troublemaker. I'm just saying I don't think you thought this all the way through here. So
yeah, I mean, Pharaoh sees that they are trapped. They're trapped. I mean, they have the Red Sea in front of them. They have these mountains on both sides of them, and he's coming up from behind. I mean, they have nowhere to go. They're not going to go over the mountains, and the Red Sea's blocked them off.
They're not going to go through the Red Sea.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Well, and you mentioned that this is because they didn't know a lot about God yet, right? This is why God wanted to demonstrate his power. And so it's like, when I look at the things in my own life, I think the same thing. I go, well, we're not going to go through the Red Sea. That's not going to be possible.
Right.
And it's because I haven't been watching, I haven't been listening, I haven't been learning, but I haven't seen God demonstrate the power, or I just have forgotten that I've seen God demonstrate the power, and I've gone back to grumbling and being like, well, this isn't going to happen again. This isn't going to work.
Oh, we're so much like this. And Moses says, stop, be still. Be quiet. Don't make things worse.
Yeah, fear not. Be silent.
Yeah, and you will see the salvation of God. And Yeah, but being Moses, he's one guy I want to talk to in heaven. I just think he went through more than any other leader ever in history, no doubt, with these people.
Yeah, would that be, that's kind of a sidetracked question, but would that be the one you would choose? Besides Jesus?
I mean, I want to sit down with Moses, and I want to sit down with the Apostle Paul.
I was going to say, Paul's got to be up there for
He's,
you.
I love him. He's amazing. David. But Moses, what a picture of he was a humble man. I think the Prince of Egypt, by the way, people haven't seen that. I think that's a great depiction.
It's great.
I think
cool.
it's very well done. Yeah.
I'm surprised that it's done as well as it is, and especially with some of the people that are involved, you're kind of shocked that it's as good as it is.
And he seems like a pretty humble Moses, and Moses was, it says in the scripture, he's the meekest man in the earth. So, but boy, did he have to deal with some people that were in fear. But we're the same way.
Yeah.
We're that way. Like you said, Garrett, I mean, you get up against an impossible situation, which, even with the church now, the setback with COVID-19, shutting down again. And I have been very frustrated with what I can't control, very frustrated. And yet in that situation with Moses, what could they do? So they cry out, they complain, they make things worse. I maybe the one principle I should apply to my own life is when it's impossible, at least don't make it worse by complaining, I mean, let's
be quiet.
Let's pray or be quiet.
Yeah. I grumble all the time. We've made a rule now. Caitlin and I have made a rule where when we get home and one of us has had a frustrating day, we don't start by talking about the frustration. We have to stop and be like, hey, what's 3 positives about the day?
That's
and we have
great.
to start that way. Otherwise, the rest of our night, we'll start venting.
Just
we'll
depressed.
And
we
can tank.
It's
a spiral.
Yeah.
We tank hard with that. And her and I do not differ in this. Both of us are exactly the same with it. Once it gets a little bit negative,
going
both of us
down.
Are just,
well, that goes with the fear not part of, one of the things that Bret said regarding where your focus is or what you're looking at, fixing your eyes on Jesus, that list of the positive things, that's really a big part of where are you giving your attention to, when you're going through difficult moments, when you're hit with the impossible or what seems like the impossible situation.
Fix your eyes on Jesus.
If you need to fix your eyes on Jesus, turn your eyes towards him, give him your gaze and begin to see who he is in light of your situation, not your situation in light of who he is.
Right. I remember in 2017 when the fires had happened and, everybody's got crazy stories from that night and some are far more intense and crazy than others. But I know both of you were in areas where I think when I first started talking to some other people on the staff the next morning, it was, we think John and Lauren's apartment went down.
Oh, yeah.
And we think that Bret and Eve's house went down.
Yeah.
And I think I talked to you, Bret, like 20 minutes later. And I don't know what your feelings really were. I was fairly new here. I'd only been here, I think John and I had been here 6 months or so.
Not long.
It hadn't been long. But I remember talking to you right after. I think Erica had said, we think Bret and Eve's house went down last night because Coffee Park got hit. And I think I called you like 20 minutes later to ask you, do I need to stay here or can I go back to Modesto? And your chipper voice, you were fine. You were like, yeah, head back, go see your family. We'll get stuff figured out. It's fine. And I was like,
that does sound like Bret.
Did you lose? Is your house? Oh, we don't know. We're going to go drive by if we can later and see, the damage and what I was like so shocked because none of us had really slept because if you went to sleep at 10, you were up by midnight getting out of there, right? So like nobody's been sleeping, everybody's stressed out, and there's no answers. And I just remember thinking like, I have to not grumble. So that actually, surprisingly, looking back on that, I can't believe I remember it, but I remember hearing your tone, and it influenced me.
That's good. One of the few times that I acted in faith.
And oh my gosh. But with the fires happening, and it was the same kind of feeling of like, what's going to happen? What are we going to do? What's the new normal? This is crazy. And then a few days later, we found out that Christina had passed away in the fire, who was part of our small group.
That was so sad.
And there was numerous times where, I don't do this often, but I just break down crying because I'm just like tired and I don't know how to go about it. But what stuck out to me is that here we are, not even 3 years removed from that. And I already, as soon as this started happening, started to be like, well, this is it, man. This is just going to be bad. And like we saw God lift us through something crazy and unprecedented with, I think it was 7,500 structures or homes were burned down in Sonoma County, and God brought the county through it, and there's the church through it. And I think that there was a lot of great things that happened through that. There's people that became Christians through it, and some great stories. But I look back and I go, why don't I remember what that, the provision and the protection and the just the guidance that God gave us through that time as a church and as a community, to look at what now, like what do we ever really think that God's not going to get us through this?
Yeah, exactly. And it seems like we have to learn it over and over and over and over again. I do think that probably even our listeners, you've grown more spiritually than you realize.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'd say it this way: your faith is stronger than you think.
Mm-hmm.
And even though you have your setbacks, you're not stressing out or worried about your finances as much, maybe,
right,
than you used to, and you're enjoying more peace and joy. So we're growing. I think Christians need to celebrate that God is teaching you, but it does take time, and it seems like we are slow to get it.
We can find ourselves being a lot like the people.
Oh, yeah.
That Moses was leading.
Oh, yeah.
Wouldn't it have been better to serve in Egypt than die in the wilderness? I can't, that might be, you mentioned with Lazarus, that if you could sit down at an event, that dinner table afterwards, I think one of the things I would want to see Moses' facial reaction to somebody saying, wouldn't it have been better to die in Egypt or serve in Egypt than die in the wilderness? But then he says, fear not, stand firm, the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall never see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you have only to be silent when you're going through things. Don't start grumbling. That's what I wrote down here. Just Garett, don't start grumbling when you're going through something. Don't let that be your first reaction.
Be still.
And then stand firm is where we ended it here. We need to, let's see, God doesn't need our help. I liked that too. God doesn't need our help. That's always something I can't believe that I ever... Because I spent a lot of my time, drawing up blueprints for God to be like, hey,
let me help you.
Let me help you out, God. You're busy. Let me show you, give you a couple of hints on where my life should be going.
Yeah, no, and that's a big picture. I would encourage the listeners to go back through these miracles in Exodus 14 and John 5 and then John 11. We also did we do John 6 or Mark 4. I guess we took Mark 4's Jesus calming down the waters, but particularly Exodus 14, John 11, and John 5, and see a picture of the gospel there, because the people were in bondage. God freed them, and then God led them through the Red Sea. It was all Him. So salvation is by grace through faith. It's everything God does. The guy at the pool didn't do anything, and God healed him. Jesus healed him. And of course, Lazarus, being dead is a picture of us being spiritually dead. We hear the voice of God. We come to life, and it's all because of what Christ does for us. So in this is a rich picture of the good news of the gospel and our own story of how we came to know Jesus and what God did. Yeah. So, it is a big picture of be still and know that I'm God, and He does it. He does the work.
Yeah. That's what I really like about the picture of salvation in this particular miracle, right? Because it's about God's redempting of His people from slavery to Egypt. The picture is slavery to sin,
yes,
through the work of Christ. And that's a great thing to pick up from this miracle, that in the same way that you had the Israelites were slaves to the Egyptians. We today in 2020, we are slaves to sin until we are set free through a relationship with Jesus Christ. And that's the Red Sea that we get to walk through. And that's identification with Christ and His death, His burial, His resurrection.
And the promised land is a picture of possessing the promises of God, or living that full, abundant life. So you're saved, but you're a young Christian, and you want to possess all the promises.
And you need to mature.
But you need to mature, and you need to go through some trials. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And not going to be easy. Yeah.
Not going to be easy.
Yeah, in John 10,
Yeah.
It's life.
Yeah. So we could look back at this, and let me ask, did they learn? Did the Israelites learn
4 times.
Well, boy,
Can you believe that's what I can't believe it. Like looking at this again, just to be like, you still had a hard time after this. Like, what was
even after they went through the Red Sea and then they were walking in the wilderness, they still had a hard time depending on God and trusting that God would provide.
But he
for
parted the sea. Like that's
and he destroyed the Egyptians.
And I mean, like it's just
fed the manna.
I agree with you, John. I'm saying like that's how I feel like in my own life. He's parted the sea already, and now I'm already just back to like, well, I don't know what he's gonna do this time, guys.
Yeah. I guess we could say there's a real danger in us grumbling, complaining, doubting, and being in disbelief. There's a huge inherent danger of doing that, and we need to learn this. Take this example and say, I love what you just said. You come home and you say, hey honey, God's good. Let's just remind ourselves of his provision, his goodness, and not slip into the downward spiral of unbelief. Essentially it's unbelief, right? It's like God can't get us out of this. God can't provide for us. God can't. So the fact that the Israelites were unable to seemingly learn from this and trust God is a warning to us. Be careful, because it's easy to fall into this.
Yeah. Do you still have struggles where you actually doubt God?
Yeah.
Both of you, not just you, Brett. I mean, I think about this every now and then. Like, am I actually doubting God, or is it just that my eyes are not focused on God? And that in itself is doubting, right? Because I'm looking to something else to fix a problem or to help a problem. But do I actually ever doubt that God will get us through this and actually get us through it better than we actually hope for?
That's a really good question. I don't feel like I'm, and I haven't been through that many trials. There's some people that are listening right now that have been through some things where it's like, ooh, that's a real test.
Yeah.
I don't think I have. I've been through trials in my life, but I feel like God's given me the ability to have faith to trust him with those. There may be trials that come where I'm going to go, that doesn't fit in my understanding of God at all. And my understanding of God just needs to grow, and I need to allow the truth of who he is to be expanded. But my faith has been tested, but I don't fall into this, I can't believe in you, God, kind of a thing. Some people do. I understand
it's amazing to hear about all these guys, and there's which musician was it recently that actually said like he's just lost his faith?
Oh yeah, from what's his name?
Hawk Nelson.
Hawk Nelson. Lead singer. He gave up his faith.
And there's
I
another
like that
guy.
band too. That's too bad.
Hawk Nelson. They had a good
they were
letters
great.
to the president. They had a song about that, didn't they? Was that Hawk Nelson?
I don't remember. I saw them at Spirit West Coast back in the day, and I thought these guys are awesome.
1990 something.
Yeah.
When we were younger, there's a band MXPX. Did you ever listen to them?
Yeah.
So the lead singer of that band, these are Christian guys. Now they weren't a Christian band, but they were Christian guys singing just punk rock songs with appropriate lyrics, right? They weren't they weren't cursing, and they weren't. But it was still secular music just done by Christian guys. And I found out fairly recently that the lead singer he's agnostic. And he's with another band now, and none of those guys are Christians, and it just seems like he was just influenced by these other guys that are very smart people. So it's hard to not listen to these smart people about stuff. And so now it's just, and that's what he's changed to. And it's surprising to me that you can lose
and
your
that's
faith.
why we have to go through trials and see God deliver us, so that our faith is strengthened, can grow.
Yeah.
And read the Old Testament stories and New Testament stories to see this is how God works. I mean, this is the truth of Scripture, because the Hawk Nelson guy just couldn't reconcile suffering in this world with a
good God
who loves you, and he couldn't reconcile it. So then he's walking away from his faith. Well, if you read the Scripture, you see there's plenty of suffering.
Yeah.
And God does work through it, but this is a fallen world.
Yeah.
So people need to have their faith strengthened.
Let's go through now to week 3, where since we're kind of talking about the struggles we're going through, the storms. So Jesus knew the storm was going to become. I didn't write the verse down here. What's the chapter we're in?
Mark 4:35.
Mark 4.
Yeah, beginning of verse 35.
So he knew the storm was coming. Jesus initiated the disciples getting into the boat. It didn't surprise him. He knew. The disciples had seen everything that Jesus had done. This is another thing. God just parted the Red Sea, Israelites, and now you're already going to doubt him again. The Israelites, the disciples had already seen everything that Jesus had done. What was right before this?
Jesus had been teaching all day, and so it was sort of at the end of the day. He had done a variety of things, teaching parables and etc.
I'm sorry. What specifically? What miracles had happened before this?
Oh boy, I have to look at the.
You're looking at
putting you
Mark
on the
6.
spot.
Is that what you said?
No, Mark chapter 4, beginning of verse 35, is them crossing over the Sea.
The difference between me taking notes on my computer to the phone are very funny, because now it's just like bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, not organized at all.
Yeah, no. So they had. I think the disciples
The
they had already
paralytic.
seen quite a bit in John 4.
Can you
Or Mark
imagine?
4, Mark
Can you
4.
imagine
Mark 4.
witnessing one of these miracles and then getting into? And then immediately, because we already talked about, like, if you could see Jesus, perform one of these miracles, like that would be amazing to be able to go back and just witness it. And they got to live this. They got to be with him. They got to hear him teach. They got to see him perform miracles. And they get into this boat, and the storm hits. It was how was you explained how the storm happens in this area. The geographic stuff that you explain is so
It comes out of
fascinating to me.
Yeah,
nowhere.
the storms in the Sea of Galilee can come out of nowhere, because you have Mount Hermon right there, and this is North Israel now, and Mount Hermon is 7,000 feet above sea level, and then you have the Sea of Galilee, which is 700 feet below.
Is it an immediate drop? Like, what's the?
Yeah,
it
it just is the difference in the elevation from 700 feet below sea level, which is Sea of Galilee, all the way up to 7,000 feet. You have warm air coming off of the low.
Is that miles apart, or is it like?
7,000 feet versus 700.
Oh no, sorry. I'm saying like the trajectory of, like, from the top of Mount Hermon down to the Sea of Galilee.
Yeah, but
is
Mount
it like
Hermon's relatively close by.
Okay, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So you just have these two different temperatures colliding. It's a Sea of Galilee is the second most, the lowest in terms of sea level lakes in the world,
because it's below.
Yeah, below sea level. So anyway, our guide, the guide in Israel said, "Oh yeah, he's been on the Sea of Galilee when they barely got out."
Wow.
So
how big is it?
It's big.
They were going from one end to the other.
It's almost like a Lake Tahoe.
Yeah.
I would say.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like I think 50 miles long. I can't remember now. John, you can Wikipedia
look it up really quick.
the Sea of Galilee. It's a big lake.
Yeah, it's pretty big. It's 8 miles wide.
Wow.
Yeah, 8 miles wide, and it's 41,000 acres.
I can't even an acre. I can't picture
And
what
it's
that
big.
would be.
The depth.
What
Does it
are
have the depth?
What's
The
the
depth is
church?
pretty
How many
big.
acres are we on here?
We're on 60 acres.
Okay, so let's multiply that by a lot.
It's not too deep. 141 feet varying is the max
Oh,
depth.
okay.
So it's
All
pretty
right.
shallow.
Not like Lake Tahoe then.
No. Yeah, but I was looking back at some of the different healings prior to Mark 4. So you got a number of them, with the withered hand that Jesus heals, healing the paralytic, Jesus healing Mary, Jesus heals a man with an unclean spirit. And that all comes after Jesus calls the first disciples.
Right.
So
they had seen some.
They had seen the miracles. Yeah.
And so they get in the boat, they start crossing. This crazy storm comes out of nowhere, and they basically, just like the Israelites, they freak out, and they wake Jesus up. And I love that you said they basically woke him up to say, "Come on, be anxious with us, freak out with us,
What
Jesus.
are you doing?
Don't you care that we're gonna die here?" And Jesus gets and again, this is my phone notes, so I didn't write the scripture down. Can one of you read this?
You want me to read the whole thing?
Yeah, go for it.
On that day, when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was, and the other boats were with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking against the boat, so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. I love that. And they woke him and said to him,
Even
"Teacher,"
Jesus needs naps, guys.
and he had a cushion too. I like that. "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said to them, "Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great fear and said to another, Who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him?
Wow. I can't, another one. I just can't imagine being there for this.
Yeah, I like when he says to them in verse 40, he said to them, "Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith?" That's the English ESV translation. The King James Version has it, or it could be translated. It could be translated this: "Where is your faith?"
Where?
So, do you still have no faith, or where is it? No, where is it located? It's like, is it back to John 5, the pool of Bethesda? Is that your answer? Or where is your faith?
Interesting.
Where is your faith located right now?
I like that.
Is it in Jesus, or is it in something else?
Wow.
So, and then I love Mark asking this question: Who is this that even the wind and the, or they said, that records this.
It sounds like Bret in Israel a couple years ago.
Yeah,
who is this?
Who is
the
wind
Jesus?
and the waves obey him? It was you. You taught this passage.
I did.
On the Sea of Galilee. You did a great job.
It was pretty surreal to be on the Sea of Galilee, read this passage, teach on it, and to be able to understand that this was the location where the storm did hit.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is. It's just it's real. But I love that. I never thought about that way. Where is your faith? Where is it located?
Yeah.
Wow, what a good
what
thought.
is it directed?
That's a whole nother sermon in and of itself.
Yeah. What are you looking at?
So
Where-
I Need
yeah.
a Miracle Part 2 sequel?
Oh yeah. Hey,
And
that's
go into
coming.
that?
We're getting
Yeah,
motivated here because there's
Yeah.
other miracles we could talk about.
Yeah, we could.
Yes.
Yeah.
I loved that. Is really cool. Bret, did you know you do a good job, Bret? Did you know that?
You guys, this is my little encouragement when I come into these podcasts.
We
here.
compliment Bret often to make sure he listens.
Although
No,
I
I'm just
did
kidding.
listen to one where you guys were ripping me apart on one.
Us?
I listened
We
to that.
decided-
Never.
Thought I need to be at those things now.
Yeah. I love that you said this. Not only does Jesus care, Jesus can.
Mm.
And then what's your storm in your in life? And I had mentioned this last week on the podcast when we started our new worship podcast with the worship team talking about worship off the stage and beyond the stage. And I talked about one of the bigger storms in my life had happened actually at the beginning, right at the beginning of COVID. And my dad had a heart attack, and I started going through some health issues that were really scary to me and frustrating. And the storm in my life was, everything was crashing down because I'm also a creature of habit. So like when COVID hits and we get a text Sunday morning at like 5:30 a.m. from Kiki saying, Sonoma County has a case, so we're not having church today. It's like, oh man, out of routine for Sunday, and then it's 4 months in and we're out of routine. But it was this crazy storm for my own personality to have hit in my life. And it was difficult. It was hard. And I isolated myself a little bit. I didn't even tell anybody about it for 4 to 6 weeks, where I just kind of was like, you know what, it's probably nothing. It was some health stuff. I'm like, it's probably nothing. Get some tests done. But then COVID hits and I can't get the test done because it's all what's not voluntary,
elective. Yeah, elective.
All elective. And then we find out, it's something that's not that big of a deal, but now I can't get it taken care of because it's an elective procedure and just all this stuff. And it was just this really frustrating time for me where it was fear, it was anxiety, it was health. It was also financial because now it's medical bills, and it's crazy amount of stuff that was stacking up for my own little tiny brain to handle. And I love that you say not only does Jesus care, which I already know, but Jesus can, and I also know that. But remember that Jesus can. God can get me through this storm. God, and He will. He can. He will. He can part the sea. He can calm the storm. All of this stuff, and so it's just a great reminder.
Yeah, I love what Spurgeon says. He says, "Is your faith alloyed with self-confidence? Don't become absorbed in your trial. Are you looking at the wind and the waves so much that you aren't seeing Jesus?"
Yeah,
I think that's good.
and then we're back to fix your eyes on Jesus, right? Stand
Don't
firm.
look at the wind and the waves so
Right.
much.
And walking on water. What's he look at? What's he get scared
Yeah,
of?
Peter.
This
when he
wasn't
looks down.
Yeah, and this was I was just gonna say that was just Peter. Peter was looking at the waves around him, as opposed to keeping his eyes on Jesus, and out of his fear, he began to sink.
Yeah. We do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sinking all the time, I feel like.
Yeah.
For the fear of Jesus, different kind of fear. This was cool, too, to think about the fear difference between the drastic difference between the fear for their lives, the fear of their safety, to all of a sudden, who is this guy that can
Mm.
just say to the storm, chill, and it just immediately, and not like that's the other thing too. It's not like the weather just kind of slowly comes down and the winds slow down a little bit. I mean, not to mention the fire thing again, but the wind that week, it was like the winds needed to die down. We kept praying let the winds die down to stop the spread of this fire. And there's been, I think it was, I don't know, 2 months ago or so, there was like the hailstorm that happened for like 2 minutes, and then it was all of a sudden it was just
really
clear,
intense.
and then it was sunny outside, and I can't imagine, because that felt intense. I can't imagine what this would have been like. All of a sudden, just like it's off, like the Truman Show where they just turn the storm off.
It seems to me such a funny picture, because they're all yelling, "Oh, don't you care? We're all gonna die. We're gonna die." And next thing, he speaks to it, and it's immediately calm, and they're still going, "We're gonna die. We're gonna die." They look around and they go,
That is a funny scene.
Oops.
Who is this?
Who is this?
Well, and the idea of be still, like he tells the storm to be still, and in a sense too, like I think back to how we were just talking about telling Moses and the people, you need just to be still. Let God be God. Let him work. He's powerful. He's able. He can, and he will. He is faithful. That's a part of this this whole idea of miracles, is that he's faithful to work in your life. He is. He really is. He will, and he cares about you. He loves you. He knows everything that is on your heart. He knows where you are and how you're struggling through it, and he cares, and he's with you, the scriptures say.
Yeah. I love the way you ended it, and John, you can see on my notes here, I wrote down just bullet point after bullet point where I basically just quoted you on each of these bullet points. So I want to read this. I said, "You asked over and over, who is this? Who is Jesus, the Son of God? When you went to Israel, you walked to a place where a miracle happened. You ask, who is Jesus? 2,000 years ago, I don't know, but something happened here. Who is Jesus Christ? The Gospels show that it's unmistakable. We have been visited by the Son of God. Who's in this boat? Who is this? He's the Son of God. The Son of God is in the boat with you. All the strength, direction, and peace that you need, you have it in Christ. Remember the things that you learn into the next storm." And then I wrote at the very end, that's hard to do sometimes.
Yeah,
which
is. It's the lesson of our life.
Yeah.
It really is. Who is Jesus Christ?
Yeah.
And the bigger your God, the smaller, the smaller your fear, the bigger your God, the greater your peace.
Right.
And the smaller your God, the smaller your peace, that kind of a thing. And people are so afraid today. They're just fearful. Is it because their God is too small? Isn't the lesson of life to realize how great God is, how able he is to provide, how faithful he is, how much he loves us? That's just the lesson of life. No way to learn it unless you go through a storm.
Right. There was, we're talking about how big God is. A long time ago when I was first starting out in ministry, there was a DVD going around of one of Louis Giglio's things where he talked about how big the stars and stuff were. Right?
How great is our God, right?
Yeah, and it was big. I mean,
indescribable.
You probably used it too at like youth camps and stuff, right?
He talked about like golf balls.
Yeah, it was if the earth was the size of a golf ball.
Yeah,
right.
So John was real attracted to that.
Right.
But he did this thing where, and this had such a huge impact on my life. You do. You're an analogy.
I like props, analogies, illustrations. Yeah, go ahead.
But he did this whole analogy with if the earth was the size of a golf ball. And he had to explain a couple things, and he does a couple of quick little numbers things where he talks about this star. First of all, he says that by the word of the Lord the heavens were made, and all their hosts by the breath of his mouth. And now he's going to talk about how big these stars are. And he says, let's go back, let's figure out what these numbers are first. So 1 million seconds ago is 12 days ago. 1 billion seconds ago is 1976. 1 trillion seconds ago is 29,700 BC. And 1 quadrillion seconds ago is 30.8 million years ago. So that was just to put in perspective the numbers, how big those numbers are. If you're talking about a quadrillion, and even if you go seconds, you're talking about 30.8 million years ago. So he talks about this star, and he says it's called, Musifi. Musifi, 3,000 light years away. That means you'd have to travel 186,000 miles per hour for 3,000 years to get there. And then he says, I hope your jaw is dropping. So if the Earth was the size of a golf ball, Musifi would be the width of 2 Golden Gate bridges, back to back. 2.7 quadrillion Earths fit inside that star. And then he talks about
it's a big star, man.
the next big, and that's not even the biggest one. So he goes to the next one and he says the Earth was the size of a golf ball. This star would be Canis Majoris, which translates to the big dog star. So the Earth would be, if the Earth were the size of a golf ball, this star would be the height of Mount Everest. And 7 quadrillion Earths can fit inside this star.
Oh my!
And that's
goodness.
enough golf balls, if the Earth were a golf ball, to cover the entire state of Texas in golf balls 22 inches deep. And it was like, he does this at the end too. He goes, let's say this is the Earth, and somewhere you're on it. Can you see where you are? Can you see which golf ball you're on? And that, all over Texas. And because it's just such a fascinating way to look at how big God is. Like you like that analogy, right? The
Absolutely,
golf balls.
yeah.
Oh, I love that. I
Yeah,
love
it's
that
a great
picture.
because
Gosh,
God's big. He's big. He's
massive.
bigger. We can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And
I'm worried about a little health issue.
Oh,
Like that's the thing. It's like he
I know.
breathed out these stars that are bigger than our minds can even fathom.
Yeah.
It's just so cool to think about.
I think preaching and teaching and our own personal Bible study is just bringing us back to a reminder of that. How
Right.
big God
Yeah.
is, how much he loves you, his grace. We just need to be reminded every single day.
Right. I want to go to week 4 now with Lazarus. Now, this was, if you were here at the church on the lawn, you heard Carl Romas speak. But if you watch online, you will see Bret speak. So they spoke on the same passage about Lazarus. So if you were here at church on the lawn, watch the one online. It's on our YouTube channel. You can check that out and hear Pastor Bret's message on it, because that's what we're going to talk about here. So I wanted to go through this too, and you jumped around a lot in this. Let's see, John 11.
Yeah, there's like 44 verses in the narrative, and I thought if I go through 44 verses, I'm going to kill them. So.
Yeah, we won't go through all 44
no
now.
pun
but
intended with Lazarus.
So some of the stuff that just stuck out to me at first, John, I'll actually let you start. Oh, wait, no. I'll start on this one.
Yeah.
So he waited. This is the thing that was fascinating to me was his wait. That he waited. He got word from Martha that Lazarus was ill, and then he waited 2 more days, so that Lazarus would die.
Right.
And
be in the grave
Yeah.
4 days by the time he got there.
Yeah.
Right.
So he waits 2 days so he could perform the ultimate miracle by the time he'd been there 4 days. So I wanted to ask just a little bit. You explained a tiny bit, just that 4 days, the significance of it was that the Jews believed that the soul didn't leave the body until after the 3rd day.
That's right.
Is there more reason why it's 3 days? Is that prophetic because of Jesus raising again in 3 days instead of his soul leaving his body? Is there something?
Yeah, I didn't see a lot about that in particular, but just that this was an unmistakable miracle.
Okay.
Was the idea. He waited so
He's
that there'd be
definitely
no
dead.
doubt. Yeah, he's definitely dead.
Do you see what I wrote there?
He's definitely dead.
Definitely
Oh no,
dead.
I wrote mostly dead versus all dead, which from The Princess Bride.
Oh,
He's mostly
okay.
dead, not all dead.
Oh, that's right.
That's what. That
So yeah, I
reminded me
think
of.
that's why Jesus waits, and it seems like sometimes God waits on doing things in our life. It's like, why is he waiting? This seems so uncaring. Why didn't he? As soon as he heard, why didn't he immediately go there? He waits because he's going to do something greater.
Yeah.
He's gonna do something even more significant in his love for Mary, Martha, of course, Lazarus.
Right.
So God's delays do not mean God's denials.
Right.
It's not. That's not my quote. I don't know whose it is.
I was going to say, Brett,
It's
that's
good
a
that
great quote.
I went back. I was like, whose quote was that? And you just say a writer.
Yeah, writer. I think
writer.
it might have been Max Lucado.
Okay.
Yeah, God's delays are not God's denials.
So I wanted to also talk a little bit about now. Martha says, "I know he'll rise again in the resurrection of the last day, but if you'd only been here, this wouldn't be over." You had talked to, I think, in verse 4, where she says that I know that whatever you ask of God, He'll do it. I was wondering, was this Martha showing faith, or was this her basically saying, like, I know that something great could have happened if you would have been here? Like, was she to the point where?
Yeah, she seems
what
to
I'm
be.
asking?
She seems to be at a place where if you'd only been here, my brother wouldn't have died. It's
Okay.
like, now that he's dead, there's nothing you can do. But in the future, my brother will rise again. And so she's putting off.
She's not grumbling.
I don't think she's grumbling, but it's like, there's nothing you can do right now, Jesus. And that's why in verse 25, when Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. I am the resurrection and the life. He's saying to Martha, I'm what you need right now. It's not, I do resurrections or I raise people from the dead. I am that very thing. Like I mentioned in the sermon online, that when I do funerals, people will talk about, the future, hoping to see this person again. And all the hope is sort of pushed into the future, right? But what about what I need right now? Well, Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life right now. I'm what you need right now.
Right now.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's what everyone needs right now.
Yes.
Everyone needs a spiritual
We need his life in
resurrection
us now.
in us, his strength in us. Yeah.
And then we get eternal life later too.
Yeah.
Which is
it reminded me, you had also talked about going to funerals where you have people come up and say, I hope to see you again on the other side.
Right,
and,
right. That kind of putting off the hope to later. Jesus says, no, you have it right now.
Yeah. And that was what you just kept. It's later. And I get so sad because I'm usually here when you do any memorial service here.
Yeah.
And I love you don't hold back on sharing the gospel at all, which I love, because it's often, there are a lot of people that
most
come
of them are not
to
Christians.
Funerals that are not Christians, and they likely only step foot in a church for a wedding or a funeral.
That's right.
And so it's the opportunity to share the gospel. And there's, the contrast of people that speak at the funerals is often, I don't want to say it's humorous, but it is, the contrast is humorous. But what's actually being said to me is really sad, because you'll hear one person come up and really show that they have this strong faith that this person had a relationship with Christ, and I will see them in heaven. And like, you can tell there's a hope, there's a joy about talking about their loved one in a way that they know that they believed in Christ, so they know that they're going to see him again. But then you get some other people that come up and talk about him, and it's all just about, man, they were so great, and I hope that I get to. It's not a confidence. It's definitely more of just like it's sad. It's really sad to see when somebody doesn't have, when you do a funeral where there are people that are unbelievers, that especially if you do a funeral for somebody who was an unbeliever.
Yeah, it's what do you say? I will turn it if I know the person. If I'm not sure where the person was at spiritually, or even if I know where they're at spiritually, I guess it doesn't matter. I turn to the reality of the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. I often use this story in John 11 and talk about how Christ, can raise you from the dead. I mean, we've already talked enough about the person who's died, and people have remembered it. When I get up there, I turn it to them and encourage them that they can grieve with hope.
Yeah.
And we're not to grieve as the world does, the scripture says. The world grieves without hope. That's not the believer. We grieve. We don't deny our emotions. Like in this passage, Jesus wept. Jesus was troubled when he went to the tomb. Jesus had his emotion. Feel your emotion, but don't do so without hope. He's the resurrection and the life.
Right. I am. I love that you went through a few of the verses.
Yeah, the present
Jesus
tense.
says, I am the life. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. I am the light of the world. I am the bread of life. I am. So John 11:32, Lord, if you'd been there, you wouldn't have died. There was no hope right there. Oops, I lost my spot.
Yeah, the
there.
Pharisees say, couldn't this one who opened the eyes of the blind have kept
Stopped
this man
him
from
from
dying? And in the narrative, the emphasis is on he could have kept him from dying, but now that he's dead,
it's gone.
There's nothing we can do.
Yeah.
Death is the final enemy that is inconquerable.
Yeah, the statistics are death.
Yeah, one in one people
out of
die,
people.
and that's it.
Yeah, hovers right around 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about the emotions of Jesus, which was also really fascinating to me. I believe, John, are you a feeler? We have a lot of this talk around here about thinkers and feelers.
I would probably say I'm more of a feeler than I am a thinker.
You would have wept if you went to the
I would have.
You would have been bawling.
I'm a crier. You know,
I can picture. So I actually, when you talked about this, because I sit in a lot of meetings with Kiki and Ash, and I'm the feeler of that group. I pictured this situation with Kiki, and Kiki just being like,
quit crying.
Quit
He's going
crying.
to
He's
raise
in
him from
heaven.
the dead.
He's in heaven. Quit crying. Why are you crying about this? And I envy that. I really do. I envy that. But I also love to see, this is so impactful for me also, that wept, I think you said the better translation would be sobbed.
Yes.
And
sobbing.
it was noticeable to people how much Jesus cared. Was this the first time people had seen this kind of emotion from Jesus? Do you know?
He, the other occasion in which Jesus weeps is when he is coming into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. So,
Which is after this, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of where we are in the narrative here. In John 11, then 12, he's anointed, then 13, the upper room. So this is actually after the triumphal entry.
Oh, okay.
Sometime in that time frame there.
Crazy week for Jesus.
Yeah, a lot of weeping. He's weeping for Jerusalem because Jerusalem won't embrace him as the Messiah, and he's weeping over their condition. And then here, a lot of them, he has weeping, which is his grief, and then he's troubled. He's irritated, and he's troubled, and he weeps. There's three different emotions that are described here. He's irritated at what death does to people. He is weeping over his love for Lazarus, and he's troubled. And this is the one that's most interesting to me.
Right.
When he goes to the tomb, he's troubled, and commentators suggest that he's pondering his own death, which would be just a few days later, and that if he doesn't go to the cross, and if he shrinks back from going to the cross, then even though he raises Lazarus once, Lazarus will be gone forever if he doesn't finish his work on the cross. And they suggest that his troubled emotion is his struggle with what he has to do to make Lazarus eternal life possible.
Yeah.
Because Lazarus, of course, was raised and then he died again, right? But
Without the
eternal
cross,
life, without the cross, the eternal life's not going to happen.
Yeah. That was, the fact that Jesus was very close to Lazarus, that he really cared. I mean, not that he doesn't care about somebody else, but just that he had this relationship with Lazarus, that he really cared, and was grieving, but also those other emotions. It's really, I think a lot of these stories, I have the tendency sometimes to, if I haven't looked at them in a while, to only remember I'll call it like the Sunday school version of it, and not remember these details about them, and just remember kind of what I would have learned in the overall story of the, what you would tell a young child to understand that Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. You wouldn't get all of this stuff because a child wouldn't necessarily understand all about this emotion, right? And so looking back at this, knowing that Jesus had these emotions for a friend of his, someone that he really cared for as a human, and seeing that side of the man, because you really can relate to, if you lose a loved one, if you lose a friend, relate to that emotion. And then to know that it's on him, to know that Lazarus is going to get to be with him for eternity is just another level that we don't get to comprehend, because we can't understand that. We're not the Savior, you know?
Yeah, and yet Jesus identifies with all of our emotions. You know, he identifies with our grief. He identifies with being troubled in spirit. He identifies with our anger, and he's felt it all. So when we come to him, we have a Savior that understands us better than we understand ourselves.
Yeah,
I think
we don't have a high priest that's unable to sympathize with what we're going through. Yeah. Hebrews.
You had this quote from Max Lucado: "We don't need someone to fix us up; we need someone to raise us up," which is a really good quote. Also, what was the rest of the quote? I didn't write the rest of that down. Do you have that there, Brett?
Let's see. Where is Maxie? Looking for Maxie.
Near the end of your week 4.
Near the end, I found my my R.C. Sproul quote. Here's Calvin. Oh, yeah, here it is. We don't need someone to fix us up. We need someone to raise us up. In the muck and the mire of what we call life, there is death, and we have been in it so long we've grown accustomed to the stink, but Christ hasn't. We are the corpse, and he is the corpse caller. We are the dead, and he is the dead raiser.
And then you said, some say that Jesus said specifically Lazarus, So not all the dead guys would walk out of their tomb.
And he had to call Lazarus out, not just dead man
come out,
or the whole cemetery would have emptied.
That's funny. Yeah.
If you ever want to go back and witness a biblical event, this would be one of them, is what you also said. Now, you were talking about...
Take off his grave clothes and set him free.
And then go sit down at dinner with him, right?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. I can't picture it. But, well, any final thoughts here about I Need a Miracle? The whole series as a whole?
Yeah, I think people ought to remember that God works primarily through providence now, and that these miracles in the New Testament are recorded so that we know he's the Son of God.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you should expect direct miracles, although God can obviously do that. But if someone's blind, to just expect that, if they have enough faith, they're going to have their eyes opened, like the case in John 9, I think that, we just have to trust that he does work primarily through providence. He arranges the events of our day-to-day lives in such a way where his hand is unmistakable. God can and does do direct miracles for his purposes, but we have to be careful. Don't make him mechanical. Don't make God, like, if you just have enough faith, you get what you want.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. That's to make God like he's some kind of a machine that you plug in the code and you get what you want. And he's personal. He's not mechanical. And then I would see the gospel pictured in all of these miracles. What's the gospel? We were dead, and Christ raised us from the death to life. You gonna say something, John?
I was just gonna say that the gospel, remembering the gospel and all of it, not missing yourself in it, not missing the fact that all of us, are in need of the great miracle, which is our spiritual death being raised to new life with Christ. And I love the book of John because it's primarily written so that people would believe that Jesus is the Son of God, believe in their heart, confess him as Lord, that they would be saved, as Paul would say. And all of these signs, all these miracles, what do these point to? That's kind of the big question. Of every miracle, it's a sign. And what is this sign saying about Jesus? Understanding that as you go back and you reread these miracles that you see in John, what do these signs of these miracles say about Jesus? And then how does that then apply to your specific situation that you find yourself in right now? But the gospel picture is such an important part. And really, every time we get on this podcast, every time you hear someone, open up their Bible and begin teaching on it, that's always got to be something that we have our antennas up for is, where's the gospel in all of this? Where am I in all of this? How do we look to Jesus and the cross and the resurrection and the new life and the hope of heaven in all of these things?
Yeah. Yeah. Brett, do you want to maybe like a one short paragraph about Romans 1-8?
Yeah, that's a great segue, John, because I'm going to get into the gospel, which is pictured here in these miracles in Romans 1-8. So we're going to kick it off this week. I'm so excited with verses 16 and 17. I'm not ashamed of the gospel, Paul says, for in it is the power of God unto salvation to the one who believes from faith to faith. And so, we'll talk about the gospel for the next 8 weeks. I can't wait.
All right. And we'll come do this mid-series. After week 3 or 4, we'll come in with, I'll schedule it so, Brett, we can get you in here. And we'll do a mid-series recap where we'll talk through some of those first few weeks. Are you teaching the first 4?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and then do you know if anybody's going to be coming into? It's hard to say 2 months from now what's going to be going on.
Yeah, we don't know.
Are there any guest speakers lined up, or
we only plan a week in advance right now?
We're not sure what's to come.
Garett Ward's teaching August.
Yeah, he's going to do
right?
first Wednesday in August, which I'm excited about that.
You can't miss a Garett Ward preaching opportunity.
No,
he's done a good job.
It's hard to get him. We have to schedule him weeks in advance.
Yeah,
he's so busy.
Or months in this case.
Months in advance.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming down. So this weekend, we've got church online and church on the lawn. So our normal service times, you can watch the service at 8:15, 9:30, or 11:15 on Sunday, or 5:30 on Saturday. Or you can catch it on YouTube on demand, or come join us down on the lawn and worship with us. Enjoy the weather, which should be a little bit nicer this weekend than last weekend was really hot. Cooler, that's what I mean,
Yeah.
So church on the lawn is great. Hope to see you this weekend, or hope you join us online. Have a great week.